We are here with Bernie Williams, and it's not often that we get the chance to talk to somebody who's on my shirt. That's really not something, an opportunity that comes across every day. So trust us, Bernie, we are extremely thankful. And thank you so much for joining us. We want to start off by asking you about something that we know is near and dear to your heart. I know you're here courtesy of the Breathless campaign. Can you tell me a little bit more about your work with the campaign?
Yeah, breathless campaign. It's for me, it's about idiopathic pulmonary fibrosis. It's a rare lung disease that took the life of my father in 2001. And about 5 years ago, I teamed up with Boehringer Ingelheim in this campaign called Breathless to raise awareness about this rare disease. There's a lot of things to talk about it, but in a nutshell, is basically they've got a lot of cases for this disease that have been happening, during the last, couple of years. It's, unfortunately, it is a terminal disease, but a lot of the symptoms of IPF, which is what we kind of call it, idiopathic pulmonary fibrosis, can be related to, and they can be confused by other illnesses, like COPD and asthma and bronchitis. So I think, part of the main objective of this campaign is just to encourage people to see the doctor right away if they're finding symptoms of this disease, which may include a consistent and a constant dry cough, like fatigue or, tiredness, things that you are kind of like sort of take for granted, like walking up the stairs or, having a casual walk. If you're starting to feel tired or fatigued, that might be an indication that you may have IPF. So we're encouraging people to, visit their doctor because they can refer you to a lung specialist. And those are the people that may be able to determine whether or not you have IPF. I mean, for sure, they will be able to determine whether or not you have IPF because you definitely don't want that in your life. And it has been a really great campaign. We has given me an opportunity to talk a lot about, my father, which was my hero, and the guy that really started me playing baseball and playing music and all that stuff. So it has been a really great thing for me to be a part of.
That's amazing. And we know, especially nowadays, health is the most important. You got to stay on top of that stuff. Just so, I mean, the listeners can get an idea of your father's experience. How was that like with him, and what did he specifically deal with idiopathic pulmonary fibrosis?
Yeah, he by the time he was sort of diagnosed correctly, he was too late in the run, and he, there was not a lot that they can do for him, and he was really devastated to see him go through it. He definitely took it like a champ. He never complained. He was definitely my hero, and especially going through that, it was even more inspiring. The fact that he was able to take this journey and part of his life with a lot of dignity, and it was really hard. It's just basically your lung capacity to breathe gets diminished every day until there's a point that you cannot breathe anymore, and then you kind of pass away. So it was really, really hard to see him go through it, but at the same time, it has given me an opportunity to celebrate his life and how important he was for me by being part of this campaign and really raising awareness about this really devastating disease.
And you are playing the national anthem tonight ahead of the A's Twins game as a way of raising that awareness. And, we know you as certainly someone who's distinguished himself as an accomplished musician during your playing career, after your playing career. And I know your father inspired your music career too. So I'd love for you to talk a little bit more about that as well.
Yeah. My dad was the first person that really inspired me to play an instrument. And at the time, he was a merchant marine, and he had retired and basically settled down in Puerto Rico. And from his trips, he already had a Spanish guitar that he used to play every night. He sort of taught himself how to play. We basically would listen to him, at bedtime when we were, 7, 8 years old. One of those nights, I actually asked him if he could teach me, to play a little bit. And he was kind of surprised, but he sort of went ahead, and from that moment on, I really developed this great love for music, especially for the guitar. And I started taking lessons, and then I went to a performing arts high school, and then eventually I started playing baseball, but I never really left music. It became a really important part of my life. I used to take my guitar to road trips, plane trips. I used to sit behind Derek in back of the plane, playing, and it would be like, dude, I'm trying to sleep here. Let me, let me sleep. And I said, I always have to. On a good day, I would catch him, and he would, sing a little bit with me. But most of the time, it was, it's kind of like the way that I was able to relax, from the game, and kind of get distracted. Especially if I was having a bad time, from a slump or something like that, it was something that would take me away for a little bit, give it me a chance to regroup and reset, and get back at the next day, hopefully refreshed, mentally. So it has always been something that I've been able to do, and even more now when I retired, I went to a music school in New York, Manhattan School of Music, and I was able to graduate with a full bachelor's degree on jazz performance. So, like they say in New York now, I'm just another cat looking for a gig. But it has been a really a great blessing in my life. Going to sort of being able to exist in this both worlds. In the world of sports, obviously playing with the Yankees, and now later on in my life, being able to do this thing with music has opened a lot of doors and great opportunities for me. So it's been a blessing.
That's beautiful. And Bernie, can you do us a favor and let our listeners and all the people out there know where can they go to learn more about Breathless and IPF?
Yeah, there's a website. I mean, my website, bernie51.com. I believe that's the latest one. I don't know, but yeah, you should just Google Bernie Williams. There should be a website there that would link you to a website called lungsandnew.com. And there is definitely a great source of information about idiopathic pulmonary fibrosis, or IPF. You can find information about doctors, caretakers, patients that are going through this process. And just to let people know that they're not alone, that there's a lot of information out there with options, about how to get the best possible treatment at this time for this disease, and enhance the quality of your life, and maybe it lengthen lengthen your life. In some instances, there's a lot of options out there that they should know.
Thank you. Yeah. Thanks so much for laying that out. That's, we didn't know much before we started talking to you. And I feel like now we're very informed, and there's so much more to dive into, and people should definitely be aware if they encounter these symptoms, if they encounter things like this. Obviously respiratory symptoms, people are more acutely aware of now than they have been in the past. So yeah, we really, really appreciate you dropping by to give us all this updated information and keep us informed. Now, you are someone I've been waiting to speak to, and Thomas has been waiting to speak to for basically our entire lives. We have an endless list of questions about the New York Yankees. We will cut them off at a certain point. We will not bother you for too long. We appreciate your time. But let's sort of start at the beginning of your Yankees career, because so many people associate you, of course, with Jeter and Mo, and you mentioned bothering Jeter on planes. We assume your relationship goes deeper than that, but Posada and Andy Pettitte, all these great Yankees of the 90s, you were in the bigs before they were. You were sort of, the early part of that wave of reaching the major leagues, and they were still joining the Yankee system. What did you know about these guys in the minors before they got called up? Like, what did you know about Derek and Mo when you were sort of a young Yankee in the Bronx?
Yeah, I mean, I like every other prospects or big players that we have playing in the minors, you always keep your ears and your eyes open, for who's the hottest prospect, who are the guys kind of like on their way up, and you see their, the stats and how they're doing. And there's always a lot of rumors about Mariano and Andy Pettitte and Jorge Posada and Derek Jeter. But I'd be remiss if I don't go a little bit back, rewind a little bit, prior to my, going into the big leagues, there were a lot of people there that sort of paved the way. I think it was after this incident with Mr. Steinbrenner that he got suspended. It's something that happened with Dave Winfield or something, I recall. It was, he was sort of out of the normal operations of the team for a period of time. And I think around that time, Mr. Gene Michaels, and a lot of the people in the front office started really taking a closer look at their minor league system. So before I came up, there were people like Hensley Mullins, there were people like Kevin Moss, Oscar Asokar, Andy Stankiewicz. I don't know if you even remember these names, but Andy, Jim Leritz, Pat Kelly. These are people that sort of started the wave of, guys like me and the Jeters and the Pettits to come in after that, because I think those people gave the Yankees, the notion that there were a lot of good players in the minor league system, and they didn't have to trade them to get, the sort of veteran type players that they were getting in the 80s and maybe the first part of the 90s. So I give them a lot of credit to give these people the opportunity to come. And those were the people that sort of paved the way for people like me to go in. I started going into sort of getting into my sort of position in the team in 91, 92, and then 93. They traded for Paul O'Neill and then sent Roberto Kelly to Cincinnati. And that was probably the time that they just sort of said, okay, this is your position to lose. And they gave me that opportunity to sort of grow into my position and the growing pains that are associated with that. I think I was very lucky to have the opportunity to do that growing process at a time that the expectations of the team weren't as good. I think that, probably guilty of building that sort of set of expectations after the mid 90s when we kind of came into this sort of winning streak. But that would not have a chance to happen if the Yankees didn't really gave the players in the minor leagues the opportunity to sort of prove themselves. And we were always, kind of, paying attention to what was going on and the people that were, basically on their way up. I remember 95 when it was like the first wild card series, and we had Don Mattingly having, one of the best postseasons that he could ever have. The only postseason that he had an opportunity to play in 95. That was the time that we got Derek and Jorge just to, like literally drink a cup of coffee in the big leagues. They went there in the last month of the season, and they were part of that run in 95. We devastatedly lost to Seattle in the last game in 95 when Edgar Martinez hit that double down the line, and Gerald Williams would recently passed away. That made that relay, and then Griffey was able to score from first, actually, the winning run. After that, I think we went through a lot of changes. Joe Torre became the manager of the team, and then there was a question of shortstop. Who are we going to put in? Because Tony Fernandez, who was our shortstop at the time, was retiring, and they were trying to give somebody the position. And Derek, he was an unproven player, was given the position. And I remember the first game he played in Cleveland, he hit a home run. So that's kind of dissipated all the doubts about him being able to play in the big leagues. And then even before that, Mariano sort of followed. He was before him because they made him a reliever. Because he was a starter, he was lights out for the first 3 or 4 innings, and then it was lights on. He was more of a he was kind of growing into his role as a perennial closer, and then the best closer that the game has ever seen. And then you get guys like Posada that kind of came after that, and Andy Pettit, obviously. So it was a really great process to see it happen in real time. Getting this influx of players that you either heard of or were familiar with because of the minor league system has given them the opportunity to come up.
Yeah. And enough about those guys, Bernie. 16, that all blossomed for you. 16 full years in the major leagues, all with the Yankees, folks. 297 career average, 858 OPS for everyone who likes stats, the advanced stats out there. 125 OPS plus. So you got a lot of memories and a lot of moments out there. So what do you think your true breakout moment was when you really arrived in the show with the Yankees?
I think it was probably at the end of the '95 season, when we were playing against the Seattle Mariners. I think that was because I have already started playing full-time since '93. In those 2 years prior to this '95 season, were kind of up and down. And I was, going up and down, and there was a lot of rumors about me sending me down. Once I got out of options, the rumor was, they're going to trade me. I remember Bob Watson was the general manager at the time, and there was a deal in place. Apparently, me going to Detroit for a Felix Fermin or something like that, trying to pave the way or trying to buy some time to get a shortstop. And so glad that deal never came through. But, those were the years, but where you were, it was very uncertain. And I remember, a person like Ricky Leday that came up with the organization. And, the time that, we were already had this sort of expectations going, and he was traded. And he was one guy that I really feel for, because I remember the year he was traded, and the moment that he was traded in Detroit, and he was sobbing, man. He was crying because he felt this great connection to the team. And all of a sudden, he was no longer a part of it. It was just a really, really hard time to sort of get some sort of normalcy in your life, because at any point you were subjected to being traded or being sent down, or especially if you had family, there was this sort of, thing in my stomach that was like, man, I better play well, because I don't know, what's going to happen. So those were kind of hard moments to sort of live, and were, part of my upbringing, to try to establish myself as a legitimate Major League Baseball player. And I guess the rest was history. I mean, I had to hone down in my skill, and given the opportunity to play, one of the most coveted positions in baseball, which is center fielder for the New York Yankees. I mean, I didn't really, I wouldn't say appreciate, but I didn't really realize the magnitude of the position that I was playing until, a couple of years later, when I started really bearing down on the history and the tradition of all these great center fielders that have played before me, from, like Mickey Rivers, the Paul Blair to DiMaggio, Mantle, and you just start mentioning all these names, Earl Combs. I mean, it was just incredible to see this sort of lineage that sort of landed in my feet. And I was like, wow, this is not only a great job, but it's also a great responsibility to sort of keep this thing going. And it was just a great blessing in my life to be able to maintain and be able to produce and be able to be at the right place at the right time, in position to win all those championships. So it was just great.
It's funny you mentioned Earl Combs, because I always think of him as a comparison for your Hall of Fame case. And we'll talk about that a little bit. But you guys are, I mean, Yankee center field lineage is incredible. Personally, I would love if you could just talk me through what is my personal favorite Bernie Williams moment of all time, which is the walk-off homer you hit in the 1996 ALCS against the Orioles, which is as far and as hard hit a walk-off home run in the playoffs as you will ever see. What do you remember about that moment?
Wow, I do remember just kind of going through the whole game process, the inning before. Once you, you start going, and you're going to the on-deck circle, there's 2 outs, and there's an out, that happens, then you go into defense. So automatically you start thinking you're gonna open up the inning. You're gonna be the leadoff guy next inning. So you got to start, thinking about that at bat. So the inning happened. The 3 outs. Coming into bat. Randy Myers, the great reliever of the Orioles at the time, and I just went into this battle with him. It was good because it was on my most comfortable side at the time, which was my right side. So I remember him just kind of coming right after me and then throwing me sliders and fastball. I don't know I don't remember the count and what it was, but I think it was a pitch that was sort of middle away that I was able to hook. And I was afraid that it was going to be foul. So once I hit it, I was like, it was starting to hook. But I was like, please stay fair, stay fair. It's like one of those, like, it was a Carlton Fisk and Fenway without the hold, try to make it fair, with my hands. But once that happened, I think everything else, I don't even remember running the bases. Going through, one base to the other, the stadium just as loud as I've ever heard it, sound. But I think, I would be kind of remiss to mention that none of that would have happened if, the infamous, Jeffrey Mayer moment that gave, sort of gave way to that moment to happen where, obviously there was a lot of controversy about that home run, when Derek hit it and he sort of tied up the game. And then he sort of opened the opportunity for me to perform at that moment. That was, just kind of like my coming of age into this sort of playoff kind of, mentality that we were going to go there and that we were going to take charge and it really set the tone on all those years where we were put in a good position to produce, and we had a great team that was able to lean on each other, and the rest was history.
Amazing. And yeah, speaking, I've always wanted to ask somebody in your position, for someone who had such a great career and played during the height of the steroid era. Now we're in this whole new kind of modern era where a lot of players who have played during that era, who were even associated with steroids, are not considered in the Hall of Fame voting. So I want your take on this. Like, do you think anyone associated should be excluded? Do you think any offenders should be let in? Do you think fringe Hall of Famers who performed very well and never tested positive or were never considered or who were never associated should be considered? Because I've always viewed you as a guy who exceeded expectations in an era where, you were kind of disadvantaged based on what was going on in the game. So how do you feel about all that?
Well, I think, I had an opportunity to think about all those things, after I retired. I think that, it's really cool that I am in those conversations when they talk about people that were not linked in any way to PEDs and were able to perform. I think I was very blessed to have a great team. I think, if you look at my numbers on any other team, they will be kind of normal, but the fact that I was able to contribute in a good part to the success of that kind of run that we had, it kind of puts me in the map. As far as the people that actually did it, you can never be able to judge the reasons, the circumstances, the amount of, things that they did or whoever. You can only judge yourself for what you did and the decisions that you made. And with that said, I would say, I was able to kind of like look in the mirror now, maybe 12, 15 years after I retired. And I could say, hey, I have no regrets. I did it the right way. I, didn't use any of that thing, those things. And I was able to perform to the best of my ability. Maybe my numbers may not be as good as some of the other people that might have been linked to that. But, at the end of the day, it is a journey that I went through, and I have no regrets, man. The amount of friends and relationships that I've fostered through my career, the awesome time that I had playing all those postseasons, and the camaraderie that I had with my teammates, and that overall experience that I had, playing one of the best teams in professional sports is something that nobody can take away from me. I would leave it up to whoever the people that have to decide, whether or not people in my position have a shot to make those decisions. I mean, it'll be a great bonus and a kind of an icing on the cake. It'll be an incredible thing to happen. So I'm not trying to say that it doesn't mean anything. It does mean a lot. But I am trying to focus on other things that will keep the pressure off or the stress out of really, dwelling on something that I have completely no control over. So I think that, at some point, things may change or they may not. I think, people are, especially the writers are making a point to address this in the way that they can. There's so many gray areas about, this PED's use and so many levels of culpability, I guess. From the front offices, to the people that were responsible, to the people that made the decision to do it, that, Major League Baseball that sort of overlooked this for years until, the Congress or the government got involved and say, hey, you got to stop this. It wasn't legal at the time, that some of these people, some of the things that they did. So the only thing that I can control is the fact that I'm thinking that I was able to perform. And I said, I'm not going to do this. And I'm going to prove to you that even if you are doing it, I'm going to beat you at your game. And I'm going to try to play to the best of my ability. And more times than not, I was able to perform. Even if they threw 104 miles an hour, they still have to throw it through the zone. I still have to, get the bat through the zone, and I still have to hit the ball. So I think there's a lot of controversy about these things. And I think time will tell. Whether or not these, writers and people that are responsible to making these decisions will have a change of heart. But it is something that, it will be great if it happens and I'm considered. But I still will consider it, like icing on the cake on a great career that I was so fortunate to be a part of.
Yeah, and no matter how things turn out, at least we are getting the chance to celebrate your era of Yankees baseball a lot in Cooperstown these days. Mariano made it unanimous. Jeter 1 vote short, and we all have a personal message for whoever that person was. I'm sure you do too.
No, what was he thinking?
But you got a great weekend out of it. And obviously we are rooting for you. We will wrap with this. We'll let you go. Obviously it's very difficult to pick, World Series champions in 96, 98, 99, 2000. And you play in the 2001 and 2003 World Series too. I mean, an overload of these incredible seasons. Did one Yankees World Series title mean more to you than the others during your time in the Bronx? If so, why? And obviously, if not, sort of how do they all blend together into telling your story?
Well, I think I can approach that question in many different ways, but I think, the one way that I will approach it is, something that I've said a couple of times when I've been asked this. I think all the World Series in my mind have a very special place in my heart. From the first one in 96, where we were heavily underrated, playing with arguably one of the best rotations in the history of the game, with the Atlanta Braves when they had Smalls and Glavine and Maddox and Avery and all those guys. And then playing in 2000 against the Mets, the whole Subway Series and all of them in between. I have, they have a special place in my heart, but I will throw you a curveball. I think the one series that I was part of that gives me the most of my, pride for being a part of is the 2001. 9/11 was something that was, a historic part of this country, and it was a great tragedy, and it just happened. It just happened in the midst of baseball. So it was up to baseball to sort of have this role of giving the people in this country some sense of normalcy, a way to distract themselves even for a couple hours from what we were going through as a nation. And even though we came one out short of winning this series, I still consider that the role that we play as team, we as much as the Arizona Diamondbacks, in bringing this sort of sense of normalcy and bringing a smile to the faces of the people that were, fans of the game at that moment in time, could not make me feel any prouder of being an American, of being part of this country, and being able to be part of that role, in what baseball meant to the United States at that time in 2001. So I always say that my favorite series, even if I didn't win, is that one because of the role that we had that we took at that moment.
Incredible.
We love that. Believe us, we appreciated what you did for us that year, all the other championship years. 2001 meant a lot to us too. It thanks for saying that, and it feels good to be able to say that to you. Bernie, thank you so much for joining us. We love spending this time with you, and obviously one of the sweetest switch hitting swings of all time will never be replicated. And yeah, you meant a lot to us growing up, and we thank you for spending some time with us today.
Thanks so much.
Oh my God. So much. So grateful, man. Thank you for taking the time to invite me and for having me there and to talk about, Breathless and all of that. So I'm very grateful. Thank you. I appreciate it a lot.